Welcome, insomniacs and thrill seekers, to your new nightmare. Do you ever feel a prickle on the back of your neck? A sense that something unseen watches you from the shadows? Do you hear whispers in the dead of night? Whispers that promise chilling secrets? We all have those moments, those times when the veil between reality and the terrifying unknown seems paper thin. Here, on this channel, we delve into those moments, those unsettling stories that lurk just beneath the surface. We'll explore the darkness that lives in abandoned asylums, the malevolent entities that haunt ancient forests, and the bone-chilling encounters that plague everyday lives. So, gather close, light a candle if you dare, because tonight, we're going to make you afraid of everything.
A decade of animosity festered in Larry's gut. Ever since moving in with Janet, a low-grade dislike for their neighbor Joan had curdled into something far more potent. Since Janet's Christmas Eve departure, the simmering resentment had boiled over, leaving a scorched landscape of bitterness in its wake. Larry stood by the kitchen window, the forgotten coffee mug a monument to his disarray. He stared out at Joan's garden, a riot of color that felt like a personal affront. The gentle breeze that rustled the flowers seemed to mock him with its cheer. Even the imagined sweetness of the blooms cloyed on his tongue. He pushed the lukewarm coffee away, a physical rejection mirroring the turmoil within. A flicker of movement in Joan's garden snagged Larry's attention. It was the mutt, a haphazard patchwork of pug and beagle ambling down a path of gleaming Belgian stones. Larry's gaze narrowed as the dog approached the invisible line he'd drawn in the dirt. The mutt paused, a beat of uncertainty, then with a nonchalant swagger, crossed into Larry's territory. It made a beeline for his prized Adirondack chair, the one Janet used to favor, and with a practiced lift of its leg, unleashed a territorial affront. Pure, volcanic rage erupted within Larry. He pivoted away from the sink, the forgotten coffee mug a casualty on the counter. Barefoot, he thundered across the cold tiles, the back door exploding open in his wake. The doorknob clattered to the wall, a victim of his fury. He stormed down the steps, his outrage a palpable presence. The dog, sensing the imminent explosion, tucked its tail and slunk beneath the garish yellow forsythia, vanishing from sight. Not this time, Larry snarled, launching himself after the mutt. The Belgian stones bit into his bare feet, a searing counterpoint to the burning rage in his gut. Muttering curses under his breath, he reached the forsythia, dropping to his hands and knees. He peered beneath the bush, his gut straining against his tight t-shirt. But the dog was a phantom, vanished into the labyrinthine branches on the far side. Larry heaved himself upright, a grunt escaping his lips. The effort was a stark reminder of his neglected physique, and the realization only fueled his anger further. Blood hammered in his ears as he rounded the bush, spotting the dog. Its tail was tucked tight, but its gaze held a mischievous glint, daring him to enter the sprawling green kingdom that was Joan's yard. "Get back here!" Larry roared, charging after the creature. The dog weaved between trees and bushes, a practiced escape artist, leaving Larry huffing and puffing in its wake. Within minutes, his lungs burned, his vision narrowed, and he was forced to come to a wheezing stop. Lost in the meticulously maintained maze, Larry glared around him, frustration a bitter pill on his tongue. A tiny voice, choked by anger and exertion, whispered in Larry's ear, "Go home." But defiance roared louder. This mutt wouldn't get away with its transgression. Larry would make sure of it. Lost in his fuming thoughts, he didn't register the sound at first. A melody, light and airy, drifted through the garden. The words were unintelligible, but the voice held a captivating quality that snagged his attention. Without conscious thought, Larry found himself drawn forward, tilting his head to listen more intently. Then, as abruptly as it began, the singing ceased. An unsettling silence descended, thick and heavy like the rising humidity. A prickle of unease crawled up Larry's spine. Why the sudden stop? He lumbered forward, his mind sluggish with confusion. The dense canopy of leaves overhead blocked the morning sun, casting the entire garden in an unnatural twilight. Lilac bushes, their fragrant blooms heavy in the air, materialized in front of him. And there, nestled between the branches, was the dog. Larry ignored the stinging scrape of branches, a red fury propelling him forward. He burst into a clearing, the lilacs thinning around a small, unexpected pool with a lone stone bench beside it. A frigid air hung heavy, a stark contrast to the summer heat moments ago. The dog was nowhere to be seen. Cautiously, Larry edged forward. The lush greenery swallowed the sound of his ragged breaths. A strange sense of disorientation settled over him. He'd ventured deeper than intended, deeper than he remembered Joan's yard ever being. A prickle of unease crawled up his spine. Just as the thought took root, a splash shattered the stillness. Larry whipped around, eyes darting towards the pool. Ripples danced outwards, distorting the reflection of the overhanging branches. As he approached, an unsettling sight met his gaze. Monstrous koi, their colors garish in the dappled light, glided beneath the surface. One, a behemoth of white and orange, lunged upwards, snapping at an unseen insect. But it was the depths that truly chilled him. The water, deceptively shallow at the edges, seemed to plunge into an abyss. Shapes flickered in the inky blackness, far larger than any koi he'd ever seen. Larry's gaze fixated on the pool, a cold dread snaking around his heart. How deep did it go? It defied logic, the bottom an inky mystery. An unsettling ripple broke the surface, drawing his attention further. A new shape materialized, distinct from the garish koi. It moved with an unnatural grace, deeper than any fish should be. Panic clawed at his throat as the form grew clearer. What surfaced wasn't a fish, but a horrifying parody of a human. Long, dark hair streamed around a head devoid of brows, the eyes wide and unsettlingly black. A flat nose sat above thin, pale lips stretched in a smile that sent shivers down Larry's spine. The creature was female, her upper body bare and devoid of human modesty. Powerful, webbed fingers grasped at the unseen depths, propelling her form closer. Larry felt rooted to the spot, a primal terror locking his legs. This wasn't some mythical mermaid from a storybook. This was a predator, and a wave of nausea washed over him as he realized he was trapped in her hunting ground. The mermaid ascended, her body barely disturbing the water's surface. Then, a flash of light blue pierced the dappled sunlight. Eyes, the same shade as the housecoat Joan always wore, locked onto Larry with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. Lust and something darker flickered within them. A sudden rustle shattered the horrifying vision. Larry whipped around, heart hammering in his chest. Joan stood at the edge of the clearing, the mutt by her side. Fury surged back, momentarily eclipsing the terror. "You need to control your damn dog, Joan," he roared. Joan's gaze flickered between him and the pool, a flicker of something unreadable crossing her face. "You should mind your own business, Larry," she replied, her voice laced with a surprising coldness. "Cerebus told me you were causing a ruckus." "Sure, he did," Larry scoffed, his anger a shield against the unsettling encounter. He scrutinized Joan. Her frail frame seemed dwarfed by the light blue housecoat, her white hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. Her bony face held an unsettling serenity beneath the anger in her eyes. "Leave now," Joan commanded, her voice as frigid as the unnatural air in the clearing. Larry bristled. "No, not until I know what's going on here." He jerked his thumb towards the pool. "What the hell is that thing? And where did you get it?" A flicker of surprise, quickly masked by something akin to protectiveness, crossed Joan's face. "You've seen her?" she inquired softly, her voice devoid of its earlier coldness. Larry scoffed. "How could I miss it?" Joan straightened, her posture surprisingly firm. "Her name is Naya," she said, her voice regaining its icy edge. "And she is most certainly not in it." "Whatever," Larry muttered dismissively. "Just tell me where you found her." A dangerous glint flickered in Joan's eyes. "Saved her," she spat. "Years ago." "Where?" Larry pressed, a new kind of hunger replacing his anger. "I wonder what something like that could fetch." "Maine," Joan replied, her voice tight. She sank onto the ground, her touch a gentle caress on the dog's head as it nestled against her. Disgust churned in Larry's stomach, a tangled mess with the sudden awakening of avarice. "More of them," he rasped. Undoubtedly, Jones said, her gaze never leaving the pool. Then how'd they stay hidden? Larry demanded, the gears in his mind already turning. They're clever, Joan countered. And remember, I didn't capture her. I helped her. She chose to stay. Larry scoffed. Sure, and how exactly did you help? A melancholic smile touched Joan's lips. Just a child, lost and injured on the shore. I nursed her back to health. Naya's been with me ever since. Not for much longer, Larry sneered, a chilling amusement dancing in his eyes. Any idea what a creature like that could be worth? Joan's voice turned to ice. No mermaid, a siren, and a danger to the likes of you. Larry scoffed again, but this time the sound lacked conviction. He stole a glance at the pool. The young girl, her form tinged with an unsettling luminescence, gazed back at him. A smile played on her lips, a promise whispered in the cool air. Pleasure, it seemed to beckon. Larry felt a tug in his gut, a primal urge warring with a flicker of unease. Maybe keep her for a while. Leave, Joan's voice cut through his avaricious haze. This place is no longer safe for you. Sirens drown men. I'd rather see you leave alive. Larry's laugh grated, devoid of humor. Sure, Granny. Talk show circuit. Maybe even Hollywood. The possibilities are endless. Joan released the dog with a sigh and rose to her feet. Her movements, once halting, seemed to gain a sudden, unnatural fluidity. She took slow, deliberate steps towards him, her blue eyes, a perfect match for her house goat, boring into his with an intensity that made Larry squirm. Hold on there, Larry stammered, a nervous edge creeping into his voice. Don't get any closer. A humorless smile played on Joan's lips, not reaching her eyes. Frightened of a little old lady, are we? She rasped, her voice surprisingly strong for her age. 92 years this earth has held me, Larry. What fear could I possibly inspire? Despite her words, Larry couldn't shake the feeling of unease that prickled his skin. Joan continued her approach, closing the distance between them until she stood a mere foot away. Her gaze flicked down to the pool for a heartbeat, then returned to Larry, colder than the unnatural air in the clearing. And another thing, Larry, she whispered, her voice sending shivers down his spine. This is my property. You're trespassing. Her bony finger, impossibly long and tipped with a sharp nail, jabbed into his chest with surprising force. A jolt of pain shot through him, a tangible reminder of Joan's unexpected threat. Icy fingers clamped around his ankles, a paralyzing shock that ripped through Larry. Before he could react, Joan shoved him with unnatural strength. The dog erupted in a frenzy of sharp barks. Yanking on his legs, the unseen grip tightened. Joan, gnarled hands twisted into claws, seized his shirt and slammed into him, their momentum sending them crashing into the pool. The frigid water stole his breath in a gasp. Joan's weight, a relentless stone, pressed him down. Below, unseen hands, strong and cold, dragged him deeper. Panic clawed at his throat as he thrashed, a desperate fight against the water and the unseen attackers. His lungs burned. A primal terror fueled his kicks, finally breaking the grip on his legs. But the reprieve was short-lived. Naya, a horrifying grin splitting her face, latched onto him once more. Razor-sharp teeth gleamed in the distorted light as she pulled him closer. In a surge of adrenaline, Larry twisted, his foot connecting with a sickening thud on the side of the siren's head. Her body went slack, sinking like a stone towards the inky depths. With the mermaid neutralized, Larry surged towards Joan, a primal snarl contorting his face. He seized her frail wrists, felt the sickening snap of bones as he twisted them. Ignoring her choked gasps, he shoved her under the water's surface, his entire weight crushing her down. Joan thrashed, a desperate bid for air, her eyes bulging grotesquely. But Larry held firm, a monstrous parody of a victor. A final, brutal kick to her jaw ripped a gasp from her lips, water flooding into her mouth. Her body convulsed, then went limp. Larry watched, chest heaving, as Joan sank deeper into the abyss. Only then did he allow himself a shuddering breath, the taste of chlorine stinging his lungs. He scrambled back, hauling himself out of the pool with aching arms. Soaked to the bone, he shivered violently, the world a blur of chilling water and pounding adrenaline. Heart hammering a frantic tattoo against his ribs, Larry stole a wary glance back at the pool. The surface shimmered, reflecting the dappled sunlight, but beneath it held an unsettling stillness. No sign of Joan. No sign of the mermaid. Relief warred with a sliver of unease. Had he gotten rid of them both? Or was something lurking just out of sight, waiting for the moment he let his guard down? Larry pushed himself away from the water, putting as much distance between him and the pool as his trembling legs would allow. He needed air, needed time to process the horrifying turn of events. A pathetic whimper pierced the silence. Larry's gaze fell upon the dog, its body racked with convulsions. A frothy bile bubbled around its muzzle and its eyes had rolled back, revealing only the disturbing whites. A cruel sneer twisted Larry's face, but it curdled into dread as a sickening rip tore through the air. He whipped his head back towards the dog. Where moments ago there had been a harmless mutt, a black, glistening pelt now stretched taut over a monstrous form. The creature let out a blood-curdling howl, its body contorting as its fur shredded away. Beneath, flesh bulged and warped at an unnatural pace. Larry's terror replaced his sneer as the dog grew, its form expanding until it towered over him, the size of a behemoth Great Dane. But size wasn't the most horrifying aspect. Where a single head should have been, 3 grotesque visages emerged, each a twisted parody of the original canine. A cacophony of growls erupted from the 3 throats, lips peeling back to reveal a nightmarish array of fangs. 6 eyes, burning with an unnatural yellow light, locked onto Larry. 3 deep, primal howls resonated through the clearing, a sound that promised a violent end. Without a single coherent thought, Larry bolted. Adrenaline surged through him, propelling him forward in a desperate bid for escape. He burst out of the clearing, lungs burning, the chilling echoes of the howls clawing at his heels. A faint splash reached his ears, a sickening counterpoint to the pounding of his own heart. Then, a voice. Naya's voice. It filled the air, a melodic siren song that sent shivers down his spine, a haunting echo of the promise he'd glimpsed in the pool. The song was a siren's call, both captivating and cruel. Larry, entranced, stumbled to a halt at the tree-line, mere inches from safety. He stood frozen, a horrified spectator to his own demise. Then a monstrous weight slammed into him. The 3-headed beast pinned him to the ground, a grotesque parody of a playful canine. A searing pain erupted in his lower back as gnashing teeth tore into his flesh. Lifted off the ground with a sickening ease, Larry dangled limply, a broken toy in the creature's jaws. A symphony of cracking bones and ripping muscles filled the air. A single, brutal jerk and darkness threatened to consume Larry. He felt himself crash to the earth, his body a mangled wreck. A scream tore from his throat as teeth sank into his shoulder, dragging him across the unforgiving ground. Then, blessed silence. Larry lay there, whimpering, paralyzed by the agonizing pain that stole his breath. His mind, a whirlwind of terror and regret, screamed one primal thought: I'm dying. Cold, wet hands closed around his throat, a final, chilling touch. He was yanked backwards, the world tilting as he was dragged towards the pool. A small voice, laced with a hint of dark amusement, echoed in his head, "Not long at all, Larry. Not long at all." And with that promise, a wave of icy water rushed over him, silencing his screams and extinguishing the last embers of his life.